Ladies and gentlemen, please pray silence for the former Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom and former member of the House of Lords UK for our opening keynote session, Dr. David Owen.
Well, first, let me say what a great pleasure it is to speak to an Indian audience. I first came to your marvelous country when I was 21, and I've never forgotten it. I came again when I was Foreign Secretary. I knew a number of your leaders, particularly your female leader of great distinction, Madam Nehru, and I watch all the time, really, to see what India is doing in the world. I always want you to be more active, more of a presence, and I believe that you still have a very leading contribution to make in the world, and I often think you almost underestimate your power and your influence. So, to Indian gatherings, I would always try to speak about something important. And today I want to analyze what President Trump is up to. And I think it needs to be examined very carefully. And I hope I will convince you as to what you might do to stop a trend which I don't like emerging at all. Professor Stephen Walt at Harvard University, in a lead article in Foreign Affairs, analyzed what Trump is up to. He describes Trump's central aim is to use Washington's privileged position to extract concessions, tribute, and displays of deference from both allies and adversaries in the pursuit of short-term gains in what he sees purely and simply as a businessman, a zero-sum world. Now, in April 2025, Donald Trump described the United States as like a big, beautiful department store, and everyone wants a piece of the money. Well, it may have a certain truth in it, but I'm not so sure that they're going to have that much money. Now, Donald Trump described the United States as like a big, beautiful department store, and everyone wants a piece of it. I don't think that's altogether accurate. There are aspects of American life which many people admire. I am married to an American. She's in the audience today. And I see great merits in a lot of what the United States has done and can do for the future. The question is, what do they want? I don't think it's purely our money, but I do think that they are what has been described as a predatory hegemony, whose primary goal is not to build stable and mutually beneficial relations that leave all parties better off, but under Trump, to ensure that it gains more from every interaction that others do. An arrangement that leaves the hegemon gaining more from every interaction that others do. It's an arrangement that is bound to leave the hegemon better off and its partners worse off. It's preferable to an arrangement in which both sides gain, but the partner gains more, even if the latter case yields large absolute benefits for both parties. A predatory hegemony always wants the lion's share. Now, President Trump's America needs, I think, at the moment to be called out for what is becoming the ruler of the world through a series of quite simple devices. The first step is to bankrupt the United Nations. Unfortunately, that is quite close to being achieved. So you withdraw your support from many organizations which America have hitherto supported. Take but one example, the WHO. So the first step we've been warned about. The UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, warned when announcing an 18.8% cut in UN staffing compared with 2025 on a sharply reduced budget for 2026 of a deeply precarious outlook with high arrears, delayed contributions, and the return of credits threatening to wipe out United Nations liquidity. Arrears last year totaled $760 million, coupled with a requirement to return $300 million in credits to member states. Now, the Secretary General is effectively warning everybody. Any delays in connection early in the year will force us to reduce spending even more. That means a race to bankruptcy. Now, that's the first step. When faced by bankruptcy, you then say the organization is no use, we have to replace it with something else. And what is the Trumpian solution? It's already in place, and it's called the Board of Peace. The board is named in the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2803, so it's already gaining a little respectability through the UN structures, as a body already tasked with overseeing the processes of the Gaza peace plan. Who could object to that? Practically nothing has been done since we saw the huge problems of Gaza, which were making headlines every day and suddenly seem to have gone off the headlines. The board was proposed in September 2025, was formally established in the sidelines of the 56th World Economic Forum in Davos. Not necessarily the best place to organize a UN body which is meant to be serving the interests of all nations, rich and poor. The UK government has not yet accepted or declined the invitation to join the Board of Peace and have not signed up to the board's charter. Nevertheless, Tony Blair is already a member of the executive board. The UK did attend the inaugural meeting of the Board of Peace as an observer, as did India. Several other countries, including Germany, Italy, Japan, the Netherlands, Norway, and South Korea, also sent observers. Many of these countries, who are at present big supporters of the United Nations, are hesitating over the Board of Peace. How can you be against a Board of Peace? It sounds so innocuous, so cleverly designed to close our minds and not see what they're up to. Well, what they're up to is very serious. Everybody in this world of Trumpian values wants to be relevant, not to be on the sidelines. If the US is backing an organization not just for the crude guideline, follow the money, but stay close to power and go with the tide of opinion. So the opportunists around us, and there are many of them, are only too happy to do this. Others on the agenda for joining the Board of Peace, who have yet to respond and did not attend as observers, are Australia, Brazil, China, Philippines, Portugal, Russia, and Singapore, a mixed bag. Canada's invitation was subsequently rescinded. So you can now both join and then your application can be rescinded. So Canada, one of the countries which has one of the proudest records, I might say, of supporting the United Nations has been sidelined. The role of honor of countries that so far declined Trump's invitation to participate in his Board of Peace is France, Ireland, New Zealand, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, the Vatican City, and Ukraine. Now, I urge all of you, going back either to India or to other countries, to watch this development very carefully. There is a simple message that we have. Is the UN to be destroyed and the Board of Peace take its place? The UK said in an 80th anniversary year of the first meeting in London of the UN General Assembly and Security Council, the United Kingdom remains a committed supporter, active member, and significant funder of the UN. America and its supplicants are on course to bankrupt the UN at any time, unless we are ready ourselves for substantial financial response to say we will not accept the destruction of the United Nations. Not surprisingly, of course, the United States has tried to buy off the UK and the British Commonwealth, so it's no surprise to me that Tony Blair has become an executive board member. The board has 4 other members: Marco Rubio, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and Robert Gabriel. 3 of those are well-regarded internationally people. In my view, Marco Rubio has done well, and Jared Kushner too. So they've already got some of the people who have played an important role in the Trump administration signed up for this issue. The US has already named President Trump as the chairman of the Board of Peace. But with his usual flourish, he's the chairman for life. Think about that. Then you can see what this is an ego trip. And let's be quite clear about it. And why I enjoy the opportunity of speaking and warning to an audience like yours, of people who might be able to warn. Your own country, India, has taken, in my view, much too warm a view of this organization. It's very difficult not to when you're trying to influence world policy and you're given the opportunity by the US president to do so. And we've all of us who are realists have got our criticisms of the United Nations over periods of years. Which organization would not have criticisms made? But I'm a believer in a very simple principle. I don't get rid of an organization until I'm absolutely sure that what's to replace it is better than what's there. And I am very wary of people who want to break down organizations which have records of standing up against privilege and against the rich and against those people who do not seriously take the problems of the world and try to tackle the poverty that exists still in many parts of the world. And I'm highly suspicious of people who withdraw from the WHO. Again, the WHO is not without criticism. But when you're dealing with pandemics, you can't deal with that from one country. You can't deal with it from 5 countries. You need everybody you possibly can to come together and deal with it. And some of the work that they have done, well, particularly smallpox, which was once a scourge of the world and has actually now, to all intents and purposes, been abolished. So I hesitate. I am a medical doctor, somewhat lapsed, I will admit to you. But I was able to see in a time when I was Foreign Secretary a lot of good that was done from the WHO, and to be extremely nervous. I mean, smallpox eradication is a pretty massive task, you know. a pretty massive task. You had to trace every single person and track down the last person that had smallpox. So it could have been done by no one country, and it definitely needed an organization, and it's an achievement to be proud of. So the first and essential reform is the veto, which is a serious problem in the United Nations. Let's be quite blunt about this. It was given to 5 powers. It was done because they didn't believe that you would be able to get the big countries, particularly America, and particularly what was then called USSR, Russia, to come into a big international organization unless they were given a veto. And then 3 other countries were given the veto power as well, one of which was the UK and France. And so you have 5 countries with the veto. Now, we have watched it used by Russia in a disgraceful way over the last few years. They only have to disagree with the policy to want to veto it. Now, it's one thing to disagree and to verbally disagree in an international organization, but to believe that you, because you have the veto, that you can stop the whole thing in its tracks, and time after time after time. I mean, just take the most recent issue, which is troubling the world, which is the possibility that Iran will develop a nuclear weapon, and is on track to do so because it is enriching uranium far beyond that which you need for civil power, the level of enrichment is such that you only really need it for a nuclear weapon. And they are also looking at the other aspect of getting nuclear weapons. Now, you may all have different issues about this. I mean, India has certainly had the capacity to become a nuclear weapon state if it wished to do so. It has stood away from it. It has shown that a big country, and technically a rich country, has decided it does not wish to develop nuclear weapons. Well, we can go for a world that takes no less interest in the restrictions of nuclear weapons and allows everybody, irrespective of their stability, irrespective of their history, and it will be a very dangerous world if that happens. There was once a time when leading politicians considered things like the SALT talks, limitation on strategic weapons, as being very important and given a major priority. The SALT I, SALT II negotiations. There was an extraordinary summit between Gorbachev and Reagan in Reykjavik, in Iceland, when they got very close to an agreement to abolish nuclear weapons. People were staggered how close they came. And in retrospect, it was an opportunity that may never recur. But it's still an important issue. Time after time, we have been experiencing information about how easy it is for an accident to take place with nuclear weapons. They have been written up in great detail. The facts are all there for us to see. At least 5 times, the world very nearly had a nuclear explosion which nobody wanted, nobody expected, and would have killed hundreds of thousands of people had it happened. 5 times. Well, let's make sure there isn't a 6th. And so you come to this whole question of what do you do about those countries that want to be, if you like, rogue countries, don't want to live within any form of discipline. Now, I think, therefore, reform of the UN, well, first you've got to save it. I've warned you, the mechanism is bankruptcy. And then you step in with the Board of Peace. Well, the first thing to do is to get a few countries to say we will not let it be bankrupt. We will pay to ensure that the UN stays, even if in a stripped-down position. What are the two central ingredients of the UN? The Security Council and the General Assembly. Neither would cost a very large amount of money to retain. Now, the question then comes of the Security Council and the veto. It's very hard to believe that the United States will join and stay in any organization that doesn't give them the veto. And therefore, I think we need to accept that. Instead of having 5 countries with the veto, come down to 2, and to say to China, you also can have the veto. So the 2 big countries, and people, you know, have got to get used to now, there are only 2 real superpowers. That's economic superpower and military superpower. Arguably, Russia is still, in terms of its strategic missiles and everything else, a superpower militarily still. But it's certainly not an economic superpower. You don't invade Ukraine, and when you're short, not doing very well in the battle, ask the North Koreans to come in and help you, and you bring them in as an additional source. Their military power is no longer anywhere near deserving a superpower status, and they should not be given it. So it would mean Russia giving up the veto, it would mean Britain giving up the veto, and it would mean France giving up the veto. Well, we should be prepared to do so. And we should say the revamped and new UN that we're going to try to build will not be bedeviled by the veto. It will face it from time to time, but it will not become a regular part of its thing. We think now still of this problem that we have with Iran and elsewhere, but the Iranian problem is still on our books. It's an issue. That issue is discussed many, many times in the Security Council. At times, they even had the support of China and Russia for action to be taken. But it was always, in the end, blocked by some country casting the veto. So we must encourage a new structure for a UN in which the veto is strictly limited to 2 countries. I prefer to come and say that nobody should, but I know it's not realistic. Then you look at the membership and you have to decide what countries should be permanent members and those that are not. Again, I think that instead of having a very large rotation, I would really be formal about it. I would have permanent members that come from large continents. It's ridiculous that we have a situation that India has to await its turn to be on the Security Council, and sometimes they go years after years without being on, the small number that used to come on by rotation. I think you need a Security Council that names the big countries of the world and puts them on permanently. So I would put Australia, Brazil, Canada, Germany, India, Japan, Nigeria, South Africa, and South Korea, and make them permanent members. It's ridiculous that we have a conference as large as South America without a permanent member on the Security Council. It's ridiculous that a country like Nigeria, a vast country in Africa, is not there. Now, you may notice I put in South Africa. I've spent a lot of my time in South Africa, and I'm very fond of the country. But in economic terms and in population terms, it doesn't deserve a place. But you try and get through they're absolutely brilliant operators in the UN framework, and you take South Africa out, you won't get much chance of reform. You have to pay a certain amount of political feel and nuance if you're going to make any progress in organizing and reorganizing the United Nations. But I think that you can do this by making sure Brazil, that continent, must have a permanent member. It's a vast continent. and Australia, a very big and important country, and that would take in quite a lot of the Pacific, and obviously New Zealand. They would feel they had a country which they could be, relate to. India should definitely be there, Japan. And so you would go down and have a list of permanent members, 14, I mean, and then keep the Security Council as small as you can, give another 6 memberships to be rotating. Leave a membership of 20. Now, hitherto, there's been no consensus on extending the membership of the Security Council. If consensus is reached and widening was accepted, the Security Council would be the most important functioning body in the UN. Now, you can see that I'm trying to achieve an organization that can be improved, and the UN can be improved, but is still respectable in the sense that it can speak for a complicated world of many different peoples, languages, and economic and other political viewpoints. I think if you then gave 6 rotating members to make it 20 in all, that would be manageable. You've got to be very careful with these reorganization of these bodies, that they don't become unmanageable. But what you would retain is when there is a crisis in the world, what matters is the Security Council meets in public in a form of debate around the table, and it is seen to be debating the issue, whether it's famine in Sudan, or whether it's an issue in Iceland, or whether it's an issue in Chile. And the world's television comes onto it. The very poor television companies that don't have translation themselves find they can pick up the translation of the language, which is usually one that they can understand, and can plug into that with no extra cost. And they can play and use these debates and see what's been happened, and the world is focused on it. It's one of the very few things that happens in the world where there's disaster that can be dealt with. So, I don't know what the thumbs up is. I think it means I should speak for a little less time. So my final breach is to say to you this: don't fall for this board of peace. It's a gimmick, and it's a way of dismantling what we have. It's not a perfect structure of the United Nations, but it's worth fighting for. So don't let your government fall for it. India's not yet accepted it, and in my view, the historic traditions of India would be to stand out against it and make sure we get a proper international forum for the world, and not a Trumpian illusion with all this lovely phraseology of a board for peace, of which he is the chairman for life.